I'm getting my daughter back, no matter what it takes.
In my experience, welcome home banners are just prelude to disaster. I should have known something was wrong when I saw Tessa's face at the airport. That forced smile that never quite reached her eyes, the way she kept checking her phone during our embrace. But after 6 months of her humanitarian mission in West Africa, I was just happy to have my wife back. "Nick, you look tired," she said, studying my face as we walked to baggage claim. Her voice carried that clinical detachment I'd grown to hate during her residency years. 41 years old, 2 teenagers, and a wife halfway across the world treating Ebola patients. "Yeah, I'm tired." I grabbed her duffel bag, noting how she flinched when I touched her hand. "How are you feeling? Any symptoms I should know about?" "Doctor." Tessa Ellery, infectious disease specialist, humanitarian hero, and apparently stranger to her own husband, laughed that hollow laugh I was starting to recognize. "I'm fine, Nick, just jet lag." But she wasn't fine. Over the next 3 days, I watched my wife of 16 years transform into someone I barely recognized. She slept in the guest room, claiming she needed to readjust slowly. She barely spoke to our kids, Maddie and Will, beyond perfunctory questions about school. And when I suggested we celebrate her return with dinner at Romano's, our usual spot for anniversaries and special occasions, she claimed she had stomach issues from the travel. The stomach issues turned into something worse. I found her Thursday morning, doubled over in our kitchen, face pale and sweating. "Tess, what's wrong?" I think I need to go to the hospital." Her voice was barely a whisper. 20 minutes later, we were in the emergency room at Riverside General, the same hospital where she worked, where everyone knew Dr. Ellery as the dedicated physician who just returned from saving lives in Africa. The irony wasn't lost on me as I filled out her admission paperwork. Dr. Patricia Santos, Tessa's colleague and friend, took charge of her care. I'd met Patricia at hospital functions, a straight-talking woman in her 50s who didn't suffer fools. She examined Tessa while I paced the hallway, my mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Ebola, malaria, some exotic African disease that would make medical textbooks. What I didn't expect was what Patricia told me an hour later. "Nick, I need to speak with you privately." Her expression was grim as she led me to a small consultation room. "Tessa's going to be fine, but there are some test results we need to discuss." I sat down, bracing myself. "How bad is it?" "She has chlamydia." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at Patricia, certain I'd misheard. "What did you say?" "Chlamydia. It's a sexually transmitted infection. Very treatable with antibiotics, but..." She paused, clearly uncomfortable. "Nick, when was the last time you two were intimate?" My mouth went dry. "Before she left. 6 months ago." The implication hung in the air between us like a toxic cloud. "Are you telling me my wife brought home more than just medical experience from Africa?" Patricia's silence was answer enough. I walked out of that hospital in a daze, my 16-year marriage crumbling with each step. Tessa would be kept overnight for observation and treatment. I had until tomorrow to figure out what the hell had happened to my life. That evening, I sat in my home office, the same room where I'd Skyped with Tessa dozens of times during her mission, where she'd told me about the patients she was saving, the difference she was making. My job as IT security coordinator for the hospital system meant I understood data, patterns, anomalies. And my wife having an STD after 6 months in Africa was definitely an anomaly. I picked up my phone and dialed Mason Greeley, a private investigator I'd met through work. Mason was an ex-cop who specialized in insurance fraud and infidelity cases. He had the personality of sandpaper and smoked like a chimney, but he was thorough. "Mason, it's Nick Ellery from the hospital. I need your help." "What kind of help?" "The kind that involves my wife and 6 months in Africa that maybe weren't as humanitarian as advertised." Mason was quiet for a moment. "Meet me tomorrow at Murphy's Bar on 5th Street, 2 o'clock. And Nick, bring a recent photo of your wife." I hung up and stared at the framed picture on my desk. Tessa and me at Maddie's 8th grade graduation last year. We looked happy. We looked like people who trusted each other. If she wanted to bring something back from Africa, I thought bitterly, why couldn't it have been a giraffe? The next morning, I picked up Tessa from the hospital. She was quiet during the drive home, staring out the passenger window like she was seeing our neighborhood for the first time. "The kids are at school," I said finally. "We need to talk." "Nick, I know what you're thinking." "Do you?" "Because I'm thinking my wife of 16 years just gave me a very creative explanation for why she needs antibiotics." I pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine. I'm thinking about how you've barely looked at me since you got back. I'm thinking about how you flinched when I touched you at the airport. Tessa turned to face me, and for a moment I saw something like panic in her eyes. It's not what you think. Then explain it to me. But she couldn't, or wouldn't. She mumbled something about contaminated medical equipment and possible exposure through patient care. Explanations that might fool someone who didn't understand infectious diseases. But I'd been married to a doctor for 16 years. I knew enough to recognize BS when I heard it. That afternoon, I sat across from Mason Greeley in a booth at Murphy's Bar, sliding Tessa's photo across the scarred wooden table. Mason studied it while sipping his whiskey. His lunch, apparently. Pretty woman, he said. Smart? Too smart for her own good, it turns out. They usually are. Mason pocketed the photo. What's your timeline? She left for Africa 6 months ago. Doctors Without Borders mission in Guinea. Came back 3 days ago with an STD and a story that doesn't add up. Guinea's a long way to go for strange. Usually when wives step out, it's closer to home. Mason lit a cigarette, ignoring the no smoking sign. You want me to dig into her time in Africa? I want you to dig into everything. Phone records, credit cards, travel documents. If she sneezed in the wrong direction, I want to know about it. Mason nodded. This'll take a few days. Maybe a week. You prepared for what I might find? I thought about Tessa's face at the airport, the way she'd avoided my eyes when Patricia delivered the test results, how she'd slept in the guest room like I was the one who'd betrayed our marriage. Find the truth, Mason. Whatever it is. 3 days later, my phone rang at work. Mason's gravelly voice cut straight to the point. Nick, you better sit down. Your wife's vacation was more interactive than you thought. And that's when my real education began. Mason's office looked exactly like what you'd expect from a chain-smoking ex-cop turned private investigator. Cluttered desk, yellowed Venetian blinds, and the persistent smell of stale cigarettes mixed with disappointment. I sat in the cracked leather chair across from his desk, watching him arrange a series of photographs and documents like he was dealing cards. Before we start, Mason said, you should know this gets ugly fast. You sure you want the whole story? I've been living with a stranger for a week. Yeah, I want the whole story. Mason nodded and picked up the first photograph. Your wife never went to Guinea. The words hit me like ice water. What do you mean she never went to Guinea? I mean, Doctors Without Borders has no record of Dr. Teresa Ellery participating in any mission to West Africa. No travel documents, no medical clearances, no assignment records. Nothing. He slid a printed email across the desk. This is from their personnel department. They've never heard of her. I stared at the email, my hands shaking slightly. Then where the hell has she been for 6 months? Mason picked up another photograph. A surveillance shot of Tessa walking out of what looked like an upscale apartment building. Right here in Riverside. About 12 miles from your house, to be exact. The room seemed to tilt. She's been here, in town, this whole time? Gets better. Mason spread out more photos. She's been renting a furnished apartment on Maple Street under the name Teresa Grant. Paid for with a credit card you've never seen because she opened the account using her maiden name and a P.O. box. I studied the photos. Tessa carrying groceries. Tessa getting into a car I didn't recognize. Tessa laughing with a man I'd never seen before. In every image, she looked relaxed, happy. Happier than she'd looked with me in years. Who's the guy? Dr. Owen Grant. Orthopedic surgeon at Riverside General. Married. 2 kids. Lives in Harbor Heights. Mason lit another cigarette. Ring any bells? The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. Should it? He's been working at your wife's hospital for 3 years. They've been colleagues, maybe friends. But judging by these photos, they became a lot more than friends about 8 months ago. 8 months. 2 months before Tessa's supposed mission to Africa. I felt sick. There's more, Mason continued. Dr. Grant isn't the only one. Your wife's been quite popular in certain circles. He showed me printouts of text messages, credit card receipts from expensive restaurants, hotel charges. The evidence painted a picture of a woman living a double life, telling her husband she was saving lives in Africa while actually having an affair with a colleague and apparently several other men. How many others? Hard to say exactly. At least 3 that I can document, all connected to something called the Wednesday Wine Club. Mason's expression was grim. It's not what it sounds like. What is it? Private parties. Exclusive. Hosted by a doctor, Alexis Voss, another colleague of your wife's. Married couples, supposedly, but the couples don't always stay coupled, if you know what I mean. I knew exactly what he meant, and it made me want to punch something. Swinging, that's the polite term. The parties happen twice a month at different locations. High-end hotels, private homes, sometimes Dr. Voss's cabin up at Lake Morrison. Mason showed me more photos. Tessa entering a hotel with Owen Grant. Tessa at what looked like a cocktail party with several people I didn't recognize. Your wife became quite popular at these gatherings. Jesus Christ. I put my head in my hands. How long have you known about this? I've been tracking her activities for a week. But, Nick, this has been going on for months. Maybe longer. I looked up at him. What do you mean, longer? Mason hesitated, then pulled out a manila folder. I did some digging into her past activities. Credit card records, phone logs, travel receipts. The Africa story wasn't her first creative explanation for extended absences. He showed me evidence of weekend trips I remembered, medical conferences in Seattle, training seminars in Portland, continuing education courses in San Francisco. Except the conferences didn't exist. The seminars were fiction and the courses were cover stories for romantic getaways with various men. How long, Mason? Best I can tell, about 2 years, maybe longer. 2 years. I sat back in the chair, trying to process the magnitude of my wife's deception. 2 years of lies, fake medical missions, invented conferences, and elaborate cover stories. 2 years of me playing the supportive husband while she played house with other men. There's something else, Mason said quietly, about Dr. Grant's wife. What about her? Julia Grant. She's been suspicious for months. Hired her own investigator about 6 weeks ago. Mason smiled grimly. Turns out we've been working the same case from different angles. She knows? She knows, and she's pissed. More than pissed, she's ready for war. Mason stubbed out his cigarette. She wants to meet with you. Why? Because she has information you need, and you have information she needs. And because misery loves company. An hour later, I sat in a coffee shop downtown waiting for Julia Grant. I'd seen her picture in Mason's file. An attractive woman in her early 40s with short blonde hair and the kind of sharp eyes that suggested she didn't miss much. When she walked in, I recognized her immediately. "You must be Nick," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "You look like hell." "Thanks." "You look like someone who's been through this before." 6 months of suspicion, 3 weeks of certainty. She ordered coffee from the waitress, then fixed me with a stare that could cut glass. "How much do you know?" "Enough to know my marriage is over. Not enough to know what I'm going to do about it." Julia opened her purse and pulled out a tablet. Let me fill in some blanks. For the next hour, she showed me text messages between Owen and Tessa that made me want to throw my coffee cup through the window. Intimate messages, planning messages, messages that discussed me and Julia like we were inconvenient obstacles to their happiness. "Look at this one," Julia said, pointing to a text from Tessa to Owen dated 3 months ago. "She's complaining about having to play the devoted wife during your anniversary dinner. Says she can't wait to get back to her real life." Her real life? The phrase hit me like a slap. How did you get these? Owen's not as smart as he thinks he is. He syncs his phone to his iPad, and he left the iPad at home during one of his emergency surgeries. Julia's voice dripped sarcasm. Amazing how many emergency surgeries happen on Wednesday evenings. The wine club meetings. Exactly. She scrolled through more messages. But it's not just the affairs, Nick. They've been planning. Planning what? Julia showed me a series of messages from the past month. Owen and Tessa discussing divorce strategies, asset protection, custody arrangements. They'd been planning to leave their spouses and start new lives together, but they wanted to do it in a way that minimized their financial losses. She's been moving money, Julia said. Small amounts, but consistently. Into accounts you probably don't know about. I thought about our joint savings, the college funds for Maddie and Will, the retirement accounts we'd built together over 16 years of marriage. How much? My investigator estimates around $40,000 so far, maybe more. $40,000. Money that was supposed to secure our children's future. Our future had been funding my wife's fantasy life with her lover. What are you going to do? I asked Julia. Destroy him. Her voice was calm, matter of fact. Owen thinks he's untouchable because he's the golden boy of Riverside General, chief of orthopedics, published researcher, beloved mentor. He has no idea what's coming. And Tessa? Julia smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. That's where you come in. I can handle Owen, but your wife is the one orchestrating this whole thing. She's the one who introduced Owen to Dr. Voss's little club. She's the one who convinced him to start moving assets around. She's the puppet master. I looked at the evidence spread across the table. Photos, messages, financial records, travel receipts. The documentation of a marriage that had been dead for 2 years, while I was too trusting or too stupid to notice. What do you have in mind? War, Julia said simply. Complete and total war. They want to play games with our lives? Fine. Let's show them what happens when the people they're screwing over decide to fight back. That evening, I sat in my car outside our house watching Tessa through the kitchen window as she helped Will with his homework. She looked like the perfect mother, the dedicated wife who'd sacrificed 6 months of her life to help people in Africa. The performance was flawless. My phone buzzed with a text message from Julia. Meeting tomorrow night, 7 p.m., Murphy's Bar. Time to start planning. I looked at my wife again, this stranger who'd been playing house with other men while I raised our children and maintained the fiction of our marriage. Tessa had made her choice. She'd chosen deception over honesty, affairs over fidelity, fantasy over reality. Now it was time for me to make mine. I started the car and drove to the pharmacy to pick up some antacids. Something told me I was going to need them. The next evening at Murphy's Bar, Julia Grant looked like a woman who'd found her purpose. She'd traded her conservative coffee shop outfit for dark jeans and a black sweater that somehow made her appear both more approachable and more dangerous. I brought reinforcements, she said, nodding toward a woman at the bar. Lisa Chang, meet Nick Ellery. Lisa Chang turned out to be my ace in the hole, though I didn't know it yet. She was a family law attorney with the kind of reputation that made opposing counsel nervous and judges pay attention. More importantly, she was someone I'd known since high school. Lisa Chen back then, before she married and divorced a cardiologist who'd made the mistake of underestimating her. Nick Ellery, she said, shaking my hand. I remember you from Jefferson High. You were the guy who fixed everyone's computers. Still am, apparently, just with better pay and worse problems. Lisa's smile was sharp. Julia filled me in on your situation. I've seen worse, but not much worse. Your wife's been busy. We found a corner booth where we could talk without being overheard. Lisa spread legal documents across the table like Mason had spread his photographs, evidence of a life I thought I knew being systematically dismantled. First things first, Lisa said. We need to stop the financial bleeding. Julia's investigator found 3 accounts your wife opened using her maiden name. There might be more. Can we freeze them? We can try, but it'll be easier if we can prove fraud or deception. Which brings me to the good news. Lisa pulled out a folder. Your wife made a mistake. Just one? One that matters legally. She used your joint tax returns to qualify for one of the credit cards she's been using to fund her apartment and her affairs. That's fraud. Plain and simple. Julia leaned forward. How much trouble could she be in? Criminally? Probably not much unless the amounts get really large. But in a divorce proceeding, it's gold. Judges don't like spouses who lie about finances. Lisa looked at me seriously. Nick, how much do you want to know about what she's been doing? Everything. Lisa nodded and opened another folder. Your wife has been documenting her own affairs. What do you mean? Photos, videos, text messages. She's been keeping records of her activities with Dr. Grant and others. My guess is she thinks it's romantic, or maybe she's just narcissistic enough to want a record of her conquests. Julia laughed bitterly. Owen does the same thing. He has photos on his phone of women from the wine club parties, including your wife. The implications hit me immediately. They have evidence of their own affairs? Lots of evidence, Lisa confirmed, which makes our job easier and their position much worse. Infidelity might not matter much in no-fault divorce states, but it matters a lot when we're talking about asset division and custody. Speaking of custody, I said, what are my chances? Lisa's expression grew serious. Better than you think. Your wife abandoned her family for 6 months under false pretenses. She's been using marital assets to fund affairs. She's been lying to everyone, including your children, about where she's been and what she's been doing. She paused. And the only question is how aggressive you want to get. What do you mean? I mean, we can play this quiet file for divorce, negotiate a settlement, try to keep things civil for the kids. Or we can go nuclear, expose everything, demand full custody, push for maximum financial consequences. Lisa leaned back. The choice is yours, but you should know that your wife and Dr. Grant aren't planning to play nice. Julia pulled out her tablet again. Show him the messages from yesterday. She scrolled to a conversation between Owen and Tessa that made my blood run cold. They were discussing strategies for discrediting their spouses, including claims of emotional misuse, financial irresponsibility, and parental unfitness. She's planning to claim I'm an unfit father, I asked, reading over Julia's shoulder. Worse, she's planning to claim you've been emotionally abusive and that she was afraid to leave you. The Africa story was going to be her evidence that she needed to escape. I stared at the messages, feeling a rage I'd never experienced before. She's going to destroy my relationship with my kids to cover up her own affairs? That's the plan, Julia said. Owen's going to claim I'm mentally unstable and that he was seeking comfort elsewhere because of my erratic behavior. Lisa closed her folders. So, gentlemen and lady, the question is, are we going to let them? The answer was obvious, but I needed to hear it out loud. What do you recommend? We go nuclear, Lisa said without hesitation. We expose everything, document everything, and make sure the truth comes out before they have a chance to spin their version of events. What does that look like? It looks like serving your wife with divorce papers and a restraining order simultaneously. It looks like freezing all marital assets and demanding an emergency custody hearing. It looks like making sure everyone at Riverside General knows exactly what their golden boy and star physician have been doing on their own time. Julia smiled. I like the sound of that. There's more, Lisa continued. We're going to need evidence of the wine club activities, photos, videos, witness statements. We need to document not just the affairs, but the whole pattern of deception. How do we get that kind of evidence? Carefully and legally, Lisa emphasized. But your wife and Dr. Grant have been sloppy. They've left digital footprints everywhere. Mason can help with the technical side, and Julia's investigator has already identified several other wine club participants who might be willing to cooperate. Why would they cooperate? Julia answered that one. Because some of them are sufferers too. Dr. Voss has been running this thing like a business, and not everyone who got involved knew what they were signing up for. There are at least 3 other marriages that have been destroyed, and several people who were essentially coerced into participating. Coerced how? Professional pressure, mostly. Dr. Voss is influential at the hospital. She's made it clear that participation in her social activities can be beneficial for career advancement. The picture was getting clearer and uglier. So it's not just infidelity, it's workplace sexual maltreatment and coercion. Exactly, Lisa said, which gives us multiple angles of attack and multiple potential allies. We spent the next 2 hours planning what Lisa called the opening salvo. I would continue to act normal at home while documenting everything I could about Tessa's behavior and activities. Julia would do the same with Owen. Lisa would prepare the legal paperwork for what she promised would be a shock and awe filing that would catch both of them completely off guard. One more thing, Lisa said as we prepared to leave. This is going to get ugly fast. They're going to fight back, and they're not going to fight fair. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Tessa helping Will with his homework, the performance of motherhood and marriage she'd been maintaining while living a completely different life. I thought about 16 years of what I'd believed was partnership and love, revealed to be elaborate deception and manipulation. I'm prepared, I said. But I wasn't. Not really, because I had no idea how ugly things were about to get. 3 days later, Tessa came home from work with the kind of forced cheerfulness that had become her default mode since returning from her fictional mission to Africa. How was your day? She asked, kissing my cheek like we were still the happily married couple she'd been pretending we were. Educational, I said. How was yours? Busy. Lots of catch-up work after being away for so long. The lie came so easily, so naturally that I almost admired her skill. She'd had months of practice after all. Tess, we need to talk. Something in my tone must have alerted her because her smile faltered. What about... I pulled out the manila envelope Lisa had given me and set it on the kitchen counter between us. About your trip to Africa, about Dr. Grant, about the Wednesday wine club, about the $40,000 you've stolen from our family. The color drained from Tessa's face. For a moment, she looked like she might faint. Then her expression hardened into something I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, and completely unfamiliar. I don't know what you think you know, she said carefully. I know you never went to Africa. I know you've been living in an apartment on Maple Street for 6 months. I know about Owen Grant and Alexis Voss and the parties at Lake Morrison. I pushed the envelope toward her. I know everything, Tessa. She stared at the envelope like it might explode. What is that? Divorce papers, asset freeze orders, emergency custody motions. I watched her face as the implications sank in. And evidence. Lots and lots of evidence. Tessa's mask finally slipped completely. You fool. You had me investigated? You had yourself investigated. I just paid someone to document what you were already doing. She grabbed the envelope and tore it open, scanning the legal documents with growing panic. You can't do this. You can't take my children away from me. I'm not taking them away from you. You abandoned them. I'm just making it official. I never abandoned them. I was working. I was helping people. You were screwing Owen Grant in a rented apartment while I told our kids their mother was saving lives in Africa. My voice was rising, months of suppressed anger finally breaking through. You were stealing money from their college funds to pay for hotel rooms and expensive dinners with your boyfriends. Tessa's eyes filled with tears, but they looked more like rage than remorse. You don't understand. Owen and I, what we have is real. It's more real than this marriage has been in years. Then you should have divorced me years ago instead of living a lie. I was protecting the children. I was trying to find a way to transition that wouldn't destroy their lives. By claiming I'm an abusive husband? By planning to paint me as an unfit father? I pulled out printouts of her text messages with Owen. I've seen your transition plan, Tessa. It involved destroying me to save yourself. She read the messages, her face cycling through shock, panic, and finally a kind of desperate fury. Where did you get these? Does it matter? The point is, I know what you were planning. And now everyone else is going to know too. Everyone else? The hospital administration, the medical board, our friends and neighbors. Our children, when they're old enough to understand why their mother lied to them for 6 months. Tessa crumpled the papers in her fists. You can't do this to me. I'll fight you. I'll destroy you before I let you destroy me. You already tried to destroy me, Tessa. The difference is, I have evidence, and you have lies. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her expression. The panic was being replaced by calculation, the desperation by determination. This isn't over, she said quietly. No, I agreed. It's just beginning. That night, Tessa didn't come home. I explained to Maddie and Will that their mother was staying at a hotel while we worked through some problems. Maddie, at 15, was old enough to sense that something serious was happening. Will, at 13, just wanted to know if Mom would be back for his soccer game on Saturday. I promised them both that whatever happened between their mother and me, they would always be loved and protected. It was a promise I intended to keep, no matter what Tessa and Owen Grant had planned for me, because I was beginning to understand that this wasn't just about divorce or custody or even revenge. This was about survival, and I was determined to be the one left standing when the dust settled. The first shot fired back came on a Tuesday morning at 6:47 a.m., delivered by 2 men in cheap suits who looked like they'd stepped out of a catalog for Intimidating Thugs, Volume 1. I was loading my coffee maker when I heard car doors slam in my driveway. Through the kitchen window, I watched them walk up to my front door with the kind of casual confidence that suggested they'd done this before. The doorbell rang twice before I answered. Nick Ellery? The taller one had a scar running from his left ear to his jaw and breath that smelled like cigarettes and poor life choices. Depends who's asking. Friends of a friend. We're here to deliver a message. I don't accept messages from strangers at 7 in the morning. The shorter one, built like a refrigerator with anger management issues, stepped closer. The message is simple. Drop the divorce proceedings, stop harassing Dr. Grant, and mind your own business. Otherwise, things might get unpleasant for you and your family. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Did you just threaten my children? We didn't threaten anybody, Scarface said. We delivered a message. What you do with it is up to you. They turned and walked back to their car, a black sedan with tinted windows and no front license plate. I memorized what I could see of the rear plate and watched them drive away, my hands shaking slightly as I closed the door. Tessa and Owen had escalated to physical intimidation, which meant they were desperate, which meant Lisa's legal strategy was working, but it also meant my kids were potentially in danger. I called Lisa immediately. They sent thugs to my house, I told her. 2 guys who looked like they moonlight as debt collectors? Did they threaten you specifically? They threaten my family. Lisa, if anything happens to Maddie or Will, nothing's going to happen to your kids. But this changes things. We need to accelerate our timeline. What do you mean? I mean, we're filing everything today instead of next week. Emergency custody, restraining orders, asset freezes, the works. And we're going to make sure the police know about the intimidation attempt. Will that help? It'll help establish a pattern. Your wife is using criminal associates to threaten you into dropping legal proceedings. That's not going to look good to a judge. 2 hours later, I was at the Riverside Police Department filing a report with Detective Ray Morrison, a tired-looking man in his 50s who'd apparently seen every variation of domestic dispute the human imagination could produce. You get a good look at these guys, he asked, taking notes. Good enough. I've got a partial license plate and a description. Any idea who might have sent them? I hesitated. My wife is having an affair with a doctor named Owen Grant. We're in the middle of a divorce proceeding, and things have gotten complicated. Detective Morrison looked up from his notepad. Complicated how? She's been stealing money, living under a false identity, and apparently has friends who make house calls to deliver threats. Dr. Owen Grant, you said? The orthopedic surgeon. You know him? Morrison's expression soured. I know of him. My daughter works at the hospital. Says he's got a reputation for being influential. Influential enough to have people threaten his girlfriend's husband? Influential enough that this conversation stays between us until I can do some checking. Morrison closed his notepad. Mr. Ellery, I'm going to give you some advice. Document everything. Every phone call, every visit, every strange car in your neighborhood. And if these guys come back, you call 911 immediately. What about my kids? Keep them close. Vary their routines. Make sure the school knows not to release them to anyone except you. Morrison stood up. And Mr. Ellery, be careful. Desperate people do stupid things. That afternoon, I picked up Maddie and Will from school and took them to Lisa's office. They needed to understand what was happening, at least the parts they could handle. Your mom and I are getting divorced, I told them, sitting in Lisa's conference room while she handled the legal filings. It's not because of anything you did, and it's not because we don't love you. It's because your mom and I can't live together anymore. Maddie, sharp as always, cut straight to the heart of it. Is Mom having an affair? I looked at my 15-year-old daughter, wondering when she'd gotten old enough to ask questions like that and smart enough to read the situation so clearly. Yes, I said. She is. Will, 13 and still young enough to hope for simple solutions, asked, Can't you guys just work it out? Some things can't be worked out, buddy, but what won't change is that your mom and I both love you, and we're both going to take care of you. Where are we going to live? Maddie asked. With me, for now. Your mom is figuring some things out. What Tessa was actually doing was meeting with her own lawyer and planning her counterattack. I found out about it that evening when Lisa called with an update. She's claiming you've been emotionally abusive for years, Lisa said. Says she was afraid to leave you, which is why she invented the Africa story. She's painting herself as a sufferer who was driven to seek comfort elsewhere. That's insane. It's also predictable, but here's the problem. She's got Dr. Voss backing up her story. Dr. Voss is prepared to testify that your wife confided in her about your alleged misuse months ago. They're both lying. I know that, and you know that, but we need to prove it, which brings me to the good news. Julia's investigator found something interesting. What? Dr. Voss has been recording the wine club activities, videos, photos, audio recordings. She's got documentation of everything that's been happening at those parties. Why would she record her own illegal activities? Insurance, probably, or blackmail material, or maybe she's just a narcissist who likes to document her conquests. The point is, the recordings exist and Julia's investigator knows where they are. Can we get them? Legally, that's complicated, but we might not have to. Dr. Voss is married to a cardiologist named Robert Voss. Guess who just found out about his wife's extracurricular activities? I was beginning to see the pattern. He's pissed. He's beyond pissed. He's ready to burn down everything she's built, including her little wine club empire. And he's willing to cooperate with us to do it. The next evening, I met Dr. Robert Voss at a coffee shop near the hospital. He was a thin, nervous man in his early 50s who looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. When he spoke, his voice carried the kind of quiet rage that comes from profound betrayal. She's been running this thing for 2 years, he told me. Started as a book club, then became a wine club, then became something else entirely. How many people are involved? 15 couples, maybe 20. Some of them don't know what they're getting into when they join. Alexis is very good at gradual seduction, social pressure, professional incentives, peer influence. His hands shook slightly as he sipped his coffee. She destroyed our marriage and at least 6 others that I know of. Doctor. Voss, I need to ask you something directly. Do you have access to any recordings or documentation of these activities? He was quiet for a long moment. Alexis keeps everything on a private server in our home office. Videos, photos, membership lists, financial records. She thinks I don't know about it. Would you be willing to provide that information to my attorney? Mr. Ellery, I'd be willing to take out a full-page ad in the newspaper if it would expose what she's been doing to people. 2 days later, Lisa called me with news that changed everything. We've got them, she said. Dr. Voss provided us with enough evidence to bury your wife, Dr. Grant, and Dr. Alexis Voss. Videos, financial records, membership lists, communications, everything. What kind of videos? The kind that end careers and marriages. Your wife is prominently featured in several of them, along with Dr. Grant and at least 4 other men. I felt sick and vindicated at the same time. What happens now? Now we go nuclear. Tomorrow morning, we're filing amended motions that include this new evidence. We're also notifying the hospital administration and the state medical board. Will that be enough? Nick, by the time we're done, your wife and Dr. Grant are going to wish they'd never heard of each other. Their careers will be over, their reputations will be destroyed, and their personal lives will be in ruins. And my kids? Your kids will be safe with you, where they belong. That night, I sat in my home office looking at family photos, pictures of birthday parties and vacations, Christmas mornings and school events. 16 years of what I'd thought was a shared life, revealed to be an elaborate performance by someone I'd never really known. Tomorrow, the war would begin in earnest. Tessa and Owen had made their choice when they sent thugs to threaten my family. Now, they were going to learn what happened when you picked a fight with someone who had nothing left to lose. I thought about the scared look in Will's eyes when I'd explained the divorce, the angry confusion in Maddie's face when she'd realized her mother had been lying to all of us. My kids deserve better than parents who use them as weapons in their personal wars, but they also deserved a father who would fight for them. And that's exactly what they were going to get. The revenge engine was just getting started. The explosion came at 8:15 a.m. on a Thursday morning, delivered simultaneously to Riverside General's administration, the state medical board, and the local newspaper. Lisa had orchestrated what she called maximum impact disclosure, a coordinated release of evidence that would make it impossible for anyone to ignore what had been happening. I was sitting in my car outside the hospital when my phone started ringing. "It's done," Lisa said. "The hospital just received a formal complaint against Dr. Grant, Dr. Voss, and your wife. The medical board got copies of everything, and the newspaper got enough sanitized information to start asking very uncomfortable questions. What happens next? Chaos, probably. The hospital will have to investigate, the medical board will open formal proceedings, and the newspaper will start digging deeper." Lisa paused. "Nick, you should probably stay away from work today. Things are going to get ugly fast." She was right. By 10 a.m., my phone was buzzing with calls from colleagues, friends, and people I barely knew who'd heard rumors about the scandal at the hospital. By noon, the first news van had arrived at Riverside General. By 2 p.m., there were 3. Tessa called me at 3:17 p.m., her voice shaking with rage. "You destroyed me," she said without preamble. "You destroyed yourself. I just documented it. The hospital suspended me pending investigation. The medical board is opening a formal inquiry. There are reporters calling my office. Maybe you should have thought about that before you started recording yourself having sex with multiple partners while stealing money from your family. Those recordings were private. You had no right. I had every right to protect my children from a mother who was planning to destroy their father to cover up her own crimes." There was a long silence. When Tessa spoke again, her voice was different, colder, more controlled. "This isn't over, Nick. You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming." She hung up before I could respond. That evening, I found out what she meant. I was helping Will with his homework when Maddie came running into the kitchen, her face pale with shock. "Dad, there are people outside taking pictures of our house." I looked out the front window and saw 2 people with cameras, not reporters, but private photographers. They were taking pictures of my house, my car, and anything else they could document from the public sidewalk. My phone rang. Mason Greeley's gravelly voice cut straight to the point. "Nick, you've got problems. Your wife hired a private investigation firm to dig up dirt on you. They're looking for anything they can use to paint you as the bad guy. What kind of dirt? Financial irregularities, substance misuse, infidelity, child misuse. Anything that would support her claim that you're an unfit father and she was justified in seeking comfort elsewhere. They're not going to find anything. Doesn't matter. They'll create something if they have to. Fake witnesses, doctored documents, manufactured evidence. These guys aren't playing by the rules. I watched the photographers through my window, feeling a familiar cold anger settle in my chest. What do you recommend? Fight fire with fire. I've got contacts who specialize in this kind of warfare. We can make their lives very uncomfortable while they're trying to make yours miserable. Do it. The next morning brought a new escalation. I was dropping the kids off at school when Will pointed to a car parked across the street. Dad, that car has been following us. I looked at the silver sedan with tinted windows and felt my arterial pressure spike. Will, I want you and Maddie to go straight into the school. Don't talk to any strangers. Don't go anywhere alone, and call me if anything weird happens. Are we in danger? Maddie asked, her voice smaller than usual. No, sweetheart, but your mom and I are having a very serious disagreement, and some people are being stupid about it. After the kids were safely inside the school, I drove to the police station to file another report with Detective Morrison. They're escalating, I told him. Private investigators, photographers, surveillance. My kids are being followed. Morrison looked tired. Mr. Ellery, I've been doing some checking on Dr. Grant. He's got connections to some people who don't always operate within the law. What kind of connections? The kind that make house calls to deliver messages. The kind that specialize in making problems disappear. Morrison leaned forward. I'm going to be straight with you. This situation is heading somewhere dangerous. You need to be very careful. What about my kids? Keep them close, vary your routines, and consider getting some professional security advice. That afternoon, I met with the security consultant Mason had recommended, a former Marine named Tom Bradley, who specialized in protecting families during high-conflict divorces. Your wife and her boyfriend are playing hardball, Tom told me after reviewing the situation. Private investigators, surveillance, intimidation tactics. This isn't just about divorce anymore. This is about destroying you completely. Can you help? I can help level the playing field. Security cameras for your house, tracking devices for your cars, background checks on anyone who comes near your family. Tom's expression was serious. But Mr. Ellery, you need to understand, once we start down this path, there's no going back. This becomes total war. It's already total war. I just want to make sure I win. That evening, Julia Grant called with an update on her own situation. Owen's getting desperate, she said. He's been trying to convince me to drop the divorce in exchange for a generous settlement. When I refused, he started making threats. What kind of threats? Professional sabotage, mostly. He's got influence at the hospital and connections in the medical community. He's threatening to destroy my career if I don't cooperate. Your career. You're not a doctor. I'm a medical researcher. I work for a pharmaceutical company that does business with Riverside General. Owen's threatening to use his influence to get me fired. The pattern was becoming clear. When Tessa and Owen couldn't win through legal means, they resorted to intimidation and professional sabotage. They were using their positions at the hospital as weapons against anyone who opposed them. Julia, what if we turned the tables? What do you mean? I mean, what if we use their own tactics against them? Professional sabotage works both ways. The next morning, I put the plan into action. As the IT security coordinator for the hospital system, I had access to network logs, email records, and system usage data. Not patient information that was protected by federal law, but administrative data, scheduling records, and communication logs. What I found was a pattern of misuse that went far beyond personal affairs. Owen Grant had been using hospital resources for personal business scheduling private patients during hospital time, using hospital equipment for his private practice, billing the hospital for procedures he'd performed elsewhere. The financial irregularities totaled nearly $200,000 over 3 years. Dr. Alexis Voss had been even more creative. She'd been running her wine club activities as a business, charging membership fees and using her position at the hospital to recruit participants. She'd also been prescribing medications for non-medical purposes, performance enhancers, and mood-altering drugs for wine club members. And Tessa had been falsifying medical records to cover up absences, claiming patient visits that never happened and procedures that were never performed. I compiled everything into a comprehensive report and delivered it to Lisa, who immediately forwarded it to the hospital administration, the medical board, and the district attorney's office. "This changes everything," Lisa told me. "We're not just talking about infidelity and divorce anymore. This is criminal fraud, theft of services, and illegal prescription practices. What happens now? Now they're fighting for their freedom, not just their careers, and desperate people make mistakes." The mistake came 2 days later, delivered in the form of a phone call that would end the war once and for all. Tessa called me at work, her voice shaking with panic. "Nick, we need to talk. Owen and I—" "We want to make a deal." "What kind of deal?" "We'll give you everything you want in the divorce. Full custody, the house, the assets, everything. Just make this stop." I almost laughed. "Make what stop, Tessa? The consequences of your own actions? The criminal investigation, the media attention, the destruction of our careers." Her voice broke. "Nick, they're going to arrest us. Owen's already been suspended from the hospital. Alexis is under investigation by the DEA. And you want me to fix that for you? I want you to remember that I'm the mother of your children. Whatever I've done, Maddie and Will don't deserve to have a mother in prison." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered the thugs at my door, the threats against my children, the months of lies and manipulation. "You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy my life to protect your own." "Nick, please." "The answer is no, Tessa. You made your choices. Now live with the consequences." I hung up the phone and sat back in my chair, feeling something like peace for the first time in months. The war was almost over, and I was still standing. But Tessa had one more card to play, and she was desperate enough to use it. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Saturday morning, jarring me from the first decent sleep I'd had in weeks. Will's panicked voice cut through my grogginess like a knife. "Dad! Dad, wake up! Mom took Maddie!" I was out of bed before I was fully conscious, my heart hammering against my ribs. "What do you mean she took Maddie?" "She came to the house while you were asleep. She had a key. She woke up Maddie and told her they were going somewhere safe." Will's voice was shaking. "I tried to stop them, but Mom said you were in danger and they had to leave right now." I was already pulling on clothes, my mind racing. Where did they go? "I don't know. Mom was acting really weird, like she was scared or something. She kept looking out of the windows like someone was watching the house." "Will, listen to me. Lock all the doors and don't let anyone in except me or the police. I'm going to find your sister." I called 911 while driving to Tessa's apartment, but the response was frustratingly bureaucratic. Since Tessa was Maddie's mother and there was no custody order specifically forbidding her from taking our daughter, the police couldn't treat it as kidnapping. They could only file a report and ask Tessa to bring Maddie home. The apartment on Maple Street was dark and empty. I used the emergency key Mason had discovered to get inside, but it was clear no one had been there in days. Clothes were scattered around the bedroom. Papers were strewn across the kitchen table, and there were signs of hasty packing. I called Mason, waking him from what sounded like a whiskey-induced sleep. "She's running," he said, after I explained the situation. "The criminal investigation spooked her, and she's trying to disappear with your daughter before the walls close in completely." "Where would she go?" "Give me an hour. I'll make some calls." While Mason worked his contacts, I drove through Riverside like a man possessed, checking every hotel, every restaurant, every place Tessa might have taken Maddie. Nothing. They had vanished. Julia Grant called at 5:30 a.m. with news that made my blood run cold. "Owen's gone too," she said. "He didn't come home last night and his car isn't in the hospital parking lot. I think they ran together." "Where would they go?" "I don't know, but Nick, Owen's been talking about leaving the country. He has contacts in Central America from some medical mission work he did years ago, places where American doctors can work without too much scrutiny." The implications hit me like a physical blow. If Tessa and Owen had fled the country with Maddie, I might never see my daughter again. Mason called back at 6:15 a.m. with better news. "They're still local," he said. "Owen's credit card was used at a gas station outside town 3 hours ago. They're heading north, toward the mountains." "The mountains?" "Doctor. Voss's cabin at Lake Morrison. It's isolated, off the main roads, and it's got everything they'd need to lay low for a few days while they plan their next move." I knew the area, a wilderness region about 90 minutes north of Riverside, popular with hunters and fishermen, but largely deserted in the off-season. If Tessa and Owen were holed up there with Maddie, they could stay hidden for weeks. "I'm going after them," I told Mason. "Nick, wait for the police. This could be dangerous. The police can't do anything until there's evidence of a crime. By then, they could be gone. I was already loading my car with supplies, flashlights, water, the camping gear I'd used during my Marine days. I'm not losing my daughter. The drive to Lake Morrison took me through increasingly remote terrain, winding mountain roads that led deep into national forest land. The farther I went from civilization, the more my military training kicked in. I was no longer Nick Ellery, hospital IT coordinator and betrayed husband. I was Corporal Ellery, Marine Infantry, on a mission to extract a friendly from hostile territory. I parked my car 2 miles from Dr. Voss's cabin and approached on foot, using the skills I'd learned 20 years ago in places I tried not to think about anymore. The cabin sat in a clearing beside the lake, isolated and defensible. Perfect for someone who wanted to disappear. 2 cars were parked outside, Owen's BMW and a rental sedan I didn't recognize. Lights were on in the cabin's main room, and I could see shadows moving behind the curtains. I circled the cabin carefully, looking for the best approach. The back of the building faced the lake, with large windows that would give me a clear view of the interior. I crept through the trees until I was close enough to see inside. What I saw made my blood boil. Tessa and Owen were sitting at a kitchen table, papers spread between them. Passports, airline tickets, what looked like bank documents. They were planning their escape, probably to some country without extradition treaties. And Maddie was sitting on a couch nearby looking scared and confused. My daughter was being used as a pawn in their desperate flight from justice. I pulled out my phone and called 911, giving the dispatcher the cabin's location and explaining the situation. Then I called Mason and told him where I was. "The police are on their way," I said, "but it'll take them at least an hour to get here." "I'm not waiting. Nick, don't do anything stupid. Your daughter needs you alive and out of prison. My daughter needs me to get her away from 2 desperate criminals who are planning to flee the country with her." I ended the call and began planning my approach. The cabin had 2 entrances, front and back. If I could create a distraction at the front, I might be able to get in through the back and reach Maddie before they realized what was happening. I circled back to the front of the cabin and found what I needed. Owen's precious BMW. Using a rock from the driveway, I smashed the driver's side window, setting off the car alarm. The noise was deafening in the quiet mountain air. As expected, Owen came running out the front door to investigate, cursing and fumbling with his key fob to silence the alarm. I waited until he was focused on the car, then sprinted to the back of the cabin. The back door was unlocked. I slipped inside quietly, my heart pounding as I moved through the darkened rooms toward the main living area where I'd seen Maddie. I could hear Owen outside, still dealing with his car. Tessa was in the kitchen talking on her phone, probably to a lawyer or travel agent, and Maddie was still on the couch, looking small and frightened. "Maddie," I whispered from the doorway. My daughter's head snapped up, and her face flooded with relief. "Dad!" "Shh, we need to be quiet. Come here." Maddie started to get up, but Tessa's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Don't move, Maddie. Stay right where you are." I stepped into the room to find Tessa pointing Owen's hunting rifle at me. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were hard with desperation. "Hello, Nick. I was wondering when you'd show up." "Let Maddie go, Tessa. This is between us." "No, this is about survival. Mine and Owen's and Maddie's. You've destroyed everything else. Our careers, our reputations, our future. But you're not taking my daughter away from me. She's not your daughter to take. She belongs with her family, not running from the law with 2 criminals." Tessa's laugh was bitter. "Criminals? We're the criminals? You're the one who destroyed innocent people's lives over a few affairs." "Innocent people? You stole money from our children's college funds. Owen defrauded the hospital for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Dr. Voss was running a prostitution ring disguised as a social club." I took a step closer. "You're not sufferers, Tessa. You're criminals who got caught." "Stop right there." Tessa's voice was rising, panic creeping in. "I'll use this, Nick. I swear I will." "No, you won't, because you're not a killer, Tessa. You're just a woman who made terrible choices and is too proud to face the consequences." Owen chose that moment to come back inside, and the situation exploded into chaos. He saw me in the living room and Tessa with the rifle, and his face went white. "What the hell is he doing here?" "He followed us," Tessa said, never taking her eyes off me. "He's trying to take Maddie. I'm trying to save my daughter from 2 people who are about to flee the country to avoid federal charges." Owen pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police. Go ahead, I said. They're already on their way, along with the FBI probably, since you're planning to cross international borders with a kidnapped child. She's not kidnapped, Tessa screamed. She's my daughter. Then why is she crying? We all looked at Maddie, who was indeed crying quiet, terrified tears that broke my heart. I want to go home, she whispered. Mom, I want to go home with Dad. Something in Tessa's expression cracked. The rifle wavered in her hands. Maddie, baby, we can't go home. Your father has made it impossible for us to stay. We have to start over somewhere new. I don't want to start over. I want to go to school on Monday. I want to see my friends. I want my life back. Your life is with me, Tessa said desperately. I'm your mother. I know what's best for you. What's best for her, I said quietly, is not being used as a human shield by her mother. Tessa turned the rifle back toward me, but her hands were shaking badly now. Shut up. Just shut up. Tessa, look at what you're doing. Look at what you've become. Is this really what you want Maddie to remember about her mother? I want her to remember that I fought for her, that I didn't let you destroy our family. You destroyed our family the day you decided to start living a lie. The sound of sirens in the distance cut through our standoff. Police cars, multiple vehicles, getting closer. Owen heard them too. Tessa, we have to go. Now. I'm not leaving without Maddie. Then we're all going to prison. The sirens were getting louder. Owen grabbed a bag from the kitchen table and headed for the back door. Owen, don't leave me, Tessa called after him. But Owen Grant, the man she'd destroyed her marriage for, was already running into the woods, abandoning her the moment things got difficult. Tessa stared at the empty doorway where her lover had disappeared, and I saw the exact moment she realized the truth, that Owen had never loved her, that she'd sacrificed everything for a man who would desert her when she needed him most. The rifle dropped from her hands and clattered to the floor. He left me, she whispered. He just left me. Yes, I said gently. He did. Maddie ran to me and I wrapped my arms around her as police cars surrounded the cabin. Through the windows, I could see officers taking positions, preparing for a standoff that was already over. Tessa sank into a chair, staring at nothing. What happens now? Now you face the consequences of your choices, and Maddie and Will come home with me, where they belong. The police took Tessa into custody without incident. They found Owen an hour later, stumbling through the woods in his expensive suit, completely unprepared for wilderness survival. Dr. Vaista, Alexis Voss was arrested at her home the same morning, caught trying to destroy evidence. As we drove back to Riverside, Maddie asleep in the passenger seat, I thought about the past months, the discovery of Tessa's betrayal, the legal battles, the threats and intimidation, the final desperate flight to the mountains. It was over. Finally, completely over. Tessa would face federal charges for fraud and embezzlement. Owen would lose his medical license and probably serve prison time. Dr. Voss's wine club empire would be exposed in court proceedings that would make headlines for months, and I would rebuild my life with my children, free from the lies and manipulation that had poisoned our family for years. Justice, I realized, wasn't always swift, but when it finally arrived, it was absolutely thorough. The sun was rising as we pulled into our driveway, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. A new day, a new beginning, and a future built on truth instead of lies. Maddie stirred as I turned off the engine. Dad, are we home? Yes, sweetheart. We're home. And for the first time in months, that word meant exactly what it should. Safety, love, and family.